Joanne Vrakas filling in for Aaron Rand today. 3:21 and 21 degrees in downtown Montreal. And today is going to be a big one out in Washington as Donald Trump is expected, the Trump administration is expected anyway, to announce a very bizarro, potentially strange, true, untrue, I don't know, link between taking acetaminophen during your pregnancy and autism. Christopher Labos is a cardiologist and an epidemiologist and a regular contributor to my show, Weekends with Joanne Vrakas, every Sunday. And, we had you on the phone yesterday, Dr. Labos, and here we are again. Hi, how are you?
Hello, it's been ages.
It's been ages. We've missed each other so. But listen, Dr. Labos, we've talked quite a bit. You've written an op-ed on this, about this misinformation that RFK is sort of going off, RFK Jr., I should say, is making these links, these unscientifically based links when it comes to autism and vaccines and now acetaminophen. What do we know about any link at all between acetaminophen during gestation and autism?
There's no link. There's no link. I mean, here's the thing. You speak to any physician, speak to anybody who has reviewed the evidence in an intellectually honest manner, they will tell you there's no link. I mean, acetaminophen is probably the safest of all the over-the-counter medications to take during pregnancy. There are potential concerns with some of the other ones, like the Advils, the ibuprofen, so like, naproxen, all those medications. You want to be a little bit careful about them, but it's generally felt that if you do have a headache, if you do have fever, if you do have pain during pregnancy, your safest bet is probably with acetaminophen because all the other anti-inflammatories can actually decrease the production of amniotic fluid, which then leads to some certain, problems with the fetus. So there actually have been black box FDA warnings about this. So it's probably the safest option. Where the president is coming from, they are very much sort of cherry picking some of the data to suggest maybe there's a link, maybe there's a link there, but the better quality studies have all suggested that there's no link between acetaminophen and autism.
So Dr. Labos, what exactly is going on here? Because these are very serious announcements, they're very official announcements. Again, we're expecting this to happen. Soon he may change his mind and say I was completely wrong, but this is what's being leaked out, if you will, of the White House. You're saying that at some point one study found something? Like, where did this come from?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So let's imagine that I gave you access to all the provincial health data that was accessible in Quebec, like all the RAMQ data. If you went there and analyzed the data and looked at all the pregnant women who went to the pharmacy to buy acetaminophen, which you can actually see, especially if it was done by prescription, a little bit harder to track the over-the-counter stuff. But let's say I gave you all of this information. And you looked at these women, compared them to pregnant women who did not take acetaminophen during pregnancy, you would find that the women who took acetaminophen during pregnancy, in some of the research, had a higher risk of having a child with autism later.
But that's not causal? That's a correlation.
That's a correlation, yes. Yeah. And you have to think, why is it a correlation? Because here you have to ask yourself, why would a woman take acetaminophen during pregnancy? People don't take acetaminophen for fun during pregnancy. It's because they have a problem. They have a fever. They have a pain. They have a headache. And there has been multiple studies showing associations that having recurrent high fevers during pregnancy does tend to lead to adverse outcomes. And, some studies suggesting neurodevelopmental delay in babies. So
really?
More likely than not, what's happening is that it's not the acetaminophen that is causing problems in these women. It's that the fact that they are sick for some reason, and that underlying illness is what is contributing to this signal of having autism in their offspring. What is really interesting in that one of the better, larger studies, which was looked at, it's done in Sweden, they looked at all the administrative data that they had in that country. They did this type of association. They found the same sort of thing, the association between acetaminophen and autism. But then they adjusted using a sibling control. So rather than comparing the kids who had autism to just sort of general members of the population, they compared them to their siblings because logically your sibling is going to be very closely genetically related to you. They were raised in the same household, so they were exposed to the same environment. So it goes a long way towards correcting for those extraneous tertiary factors that might have played a role. And when you do that type of sibling control, that gets rid of any association between acetaminophen and Tylenol. So one of the biggest, larger, better done studies suggests no association. But that's the problem with this administration. They are going to go towards the lower quality evidence and ignore the good stuff that contradicts the narrative that they've sort of made up in their head.
I have so many questions, Dr. Labos, but just to clarify and really sort of so we're clear. So the acetaminophen, the usage of acetaminophen is indicative that something else was going on, and maybe it's the something else that was going on that is the issue, and not the actual taking of the Tylenol or whatever it is.
Exactly
That
right.
is what would make more sense in your mind's eye, your trained doctor's mind's eye. So then what is going on exactly here? Because what would be the benefit of the Trump government or just to come out with such a statement? Because there's a cost and a benefit to anything. So what is the benefit here of coming out with something that is not even half true, right? So what do you think's happening?
Well, RFK Jr. in particular rode to power as a champion of, certain groups of autism. And he said, I am going to find the answer for you. The government, the administration has been lying to you this whole time. And because he can't or is not able at the current time to link it back to vaccines as he's done in the past, well, he needs to give his base an answer. Like he promised back in the summer, I am going to have an answer for you by September. I will figure out what causes autism. Well, guess what? It's September. He's got to give his base an answer. And this was, I think, the convenient answer at hand, because if he goes back and tells them what is fundamentally the truth, that autism is largely genetically mediated, that's going to be an unsatisfying answer for people who have been listening to him for years and have believed his previous statements that, no, I can cure autism. And we can have a whole discussion about whether autism is even curable and whether it's even a disease.
Yeah, that's what, because the thing is, that there's so much public frustration that is felt where, how come we don't know enough about this? Why don't we, why aren't we even close to coming up with a cure? And I'm using my air quotes. Are we really that far behind in this? Does it remain such a big mystery? You touched on the genetics of it.
Well, no, here's the thing. Here's the thing. There is a 3-to-1 ratio between boys versus girls who are affected with autism. So boys are affected 3 times more often than girls. If it was an environmental factor that was doing this, it would be affecting the sexes roughly equally, not in such a large disparity.
So interesting.
And in fact, if you have family members with autism, that increases your risk. Like if you have a cousin with autism, you're at about a 9% lifetime risk of developing autism. You have a sibling with autism, it goes up to about 20%. And if you have a twin with autism, it's about 50%. The more closely genetically linked you are to somebody who has autism, the more likely you are to have autism. It is largely a genetic condition. And, we do know how to help with autism. I mean, it's not really a disease if, when we talk about it just being sort of a variant of normal. The way to deal with it is to help kids who have a developmental issue in terms of being nonverbal, helping them become verbal, like helping them build on their language skills through special education programs. And so we can do that.
We can do that. We don't have the funds for that. I do. We're running out of time, Dr. Labos, but there's a text message that just came in. It says, Joanne, if autism is genetic, why have the numbers exploded over the last decades? There is a sense that we are seeing more of it, right? Is that anecdotal?
No, it's because cases that were previously mild are now being called autism, whereas they were not called autism before. They used to use terms like Asperger's syndrome, where they would be mild. So because we're including and going and screening for these more mild cases, you are finding more of it. Like, everybody who says that they are on the spectrum, I mean, 30 years ago, these people would have been said, no, you don't have a thing. Well, now they are being, I think, in most cases, quite correctly, being diagnosed as having autism, just very, very mild forms of it, and yet they are still able to function in society. So again, it's this whole thing about being, it's the whole issue of neurodiversity. Is this really a disease, or is this just a variant of normal? And we're just seeing some of the more extreme cases that need extra educational support.
Dr. Christopher Labos, it's always such a pleasure chatting with you, and I know I'm chatting with you again next Sunday. Have a great one.
Talk to you then.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.